for joining us in this discussion, which I have to say is on a topic very close to heart to me, because it's an intersection of two very different, two very difficult topics to approach, which is the regulation of artificial intelligence, the application in parliamentary operations. Before we start, allow me to explain the format of our panel discussion today. I have drafted a few questions to each one of you, and after you responded, I will ask all the other colleagues to comment as well. I ask you to try to maintain your comments in around 3 minutes, so we have enough time for everyone to share your thoughts. Before we start, I thought that it would be interesting for each one of you to introduce yourself.
This is Fotios Fitsilis. I'm a parliamentary researcher, resident researcher in the Hellenic Parliament in Athens, Greece. My primary field of research currently is artificial intelligence in parliaments. What a surprise. And we have a holistic program, if I may say this, developing technologies, large language models, regulatory patterns, so that we potentially make the use of such technologies as safe-proof as possible for representative institutions.
Thank you so much, Fotios, for introduction and for being here with us. Jessica, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. So Jessica Smith, I'm with the U.S. House of Representatives, and for the next year, I'm focused exclusively on artificial intelligence in congressional workflows. I come from a bit of a policy-oriented background, and so just trying to make sure that we're tracking with ongoing legislation in the U.S. and using this time wisely to set ourselves up for kind of meaningful governance within our institution as we prepare for whatever is next.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for your introduction. Vitor, would you like to introduce yourself to us?
My name is Victor Pinheiro. I'm a legislative counselor here at the Federal Senate for Brazil, and I've been working in AI since at least a couple of years. We've been discussing here at the Senate how to implement AI, how to use AI in our workflows, and also here in Brazil right now we are discussing a pending bill on the regulation of AI, and there was a small committee of experts who made some suggestions on this bill. I was one of them, so I've been working with this topic inside Parliament and also as an expert trying to suggest some moves forward towards regulation of AI and its usage in different areas of public life.
Thank you so much, Vitor, for your introduction. Yassine, would you like to introduce yourself to us?
Yes, of course. So my name is Yassine Aouididi. I work for the House of Commons of Canada. I'm a senior digital product manager for audiovisual products. So effectively, it's the products that enable the capture, distribution, broadcasting, and streaming of Parliament. So basically, the technology I work on directly helps parliamentary proceedings happen as events. So in my current role, I'm exposed to AI through, right now we're starting our journey. We're trying a few things, how it works today, but it's part of my role to also think more in the future and what a committee room would look like in 5-6 years from now, from an operations perspective and the opportunities that AI represents. So I'm very close to the political action, I would say, and therefore I'm uniquely kind of positioned because between the technology and actually what MPs or parliamentarians will interact with from that perspective to legislate.
Thank you so much, Yassine, for your introduction as well. Well, without further ado, allow me to bring my first question to you, Jessica. Considering the distinct nature of parliamentary operations, the potential of artificial intelligence presented in itself both opportunities and also challenges, as we all know. I have two questions for you. The first one is, how might parliaments think about governance strategies for AI in their institutions? And secondly, how might parliaments balance the different and often conflicting pressures between AI's near-term potential to improve daily operations efficiencies with long-term considerations about the institutional guardrails?
Yeah, thanks, Luís, for the question. I'll talk for a bit about how we're thinking about AI in the U.S. House of Representatives, and use that kind of as a case study or springboard to a larger discussion. So in the U.S., we have one law in particular which governs the use of artificial intelligence in governments. And we have a few related executive orders that are established kind of key principles. So to start our thinking on how to use this technology in our ecosystem and our operational workflow, we started with that particular law and the guidelines that that were articulated in our executive orders. So these are things like, lawfulness, purposeful LLMs, or the use of AI needs to be accurate, safe, understandable, traceable. Those are just a few, and we started looking at what that means for us. And as we unpacked that, we really broke this out into kind of 3 levels of effort, right? There's staff use cases, right? So there's a variety of AI innovations that are happening all the time in our ecosystem. And there are tools that are currently in use that use things like natural language processing. So we want to encourage tactical innovation and allow staff level use to continue in some format and fashion. But at the same time, we can't do this without robust governance plans. And so as we looked at our current kind of congressional support landscape, we realized that there was definitely some need to focus on executive governance across all of our support entities. And so we're really looking there to do things like articulate robust governance strategies, identifying points of contact for AI compliance reviews, making sure that we're starting conversations with agency leadership to figure out how things like an AI framework might interact with other robust cybersecurity frameworks or other IT strategic planning policies and practices, right? So we've got this kind of staff level, we've got the governance level that we're focused on. And then the last bucket that we're paying attention to is kind of what we call institutional guardrails, right? And so that for us means making sure that we're tracking with institutional data stewardship and taking a look at our data governance policies and making sure that they're assessed in terms of AI technology. We're looking at making sure that, for example, the concept of authentic governance is preserved. Concepts like accountability and bias are things that we're paying attention to throughout all of our rules as we go about implementing and thinking about AI governance in our institution. So to summarize, we've got kind of staff AI innovations, we've got executive governance focus, and we've got institutional guardrails. And those are the 3 areas that we're really trying to bring along together.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for your opening thoughts. Vitor, I know for sure that you have some comments about that as well.
Thank you, Luís. As I see it from our perspective, from the Brazilian perspective, we have 2 different dimensions that right now we are trying to approach AI on Parliament. I say that the first one is it's a broader one. It's on a macro level, so to say, that we're discussing this bill pending before the Federal Senate, pending before our Congress, in which we are discussing how to regulate AI on its different applications in public and private sectors. It's interesting to think about this macro level because it has gotten a lot of attention from public, from civil society, from businesses, from citizens in general. And right now, a lot of focus is being directed to this macro regulation of AI, including its use on Parliament. In this bill, we have different provisions. It's a risk-based approach on regulation of AI. And one of its sectors is specifically directed to the public sector. And when we talk about AI in public sector, including Parliament, we have some specificities that should be considered and addressed. For example, we use this risk-based approach. So we have high-risk usage of AI in Parliament. And when we are discussing this in Congress, people usually think, well, but Parliament, they usually do not deal, excepting investigations, special committees, but when drafting legislation, discussing lawmaking, they do not have high-risk activities. But in my opinion, it depends. When you're talking about macro regulation of AI and in Parliament, we must think about how do you make a leap forward to data-driven legislation, data-driven lawmaking, using sources of information that you must be sure that they are not biased, that they can be trustworthy, that they can be transparent to the public and to members of Parliament as well. So we have this first level of discussion, this macro regulation of AI in our society, including Parliament. And we also have internal plans. I'd say it's more like plans instead of actual activities. But we have some plans of moving forward in using AI in Parliament, in National Congress, in the Senate, in our House of Representatives. One example that's being discussed and developed right now, it's a natural language process model about retrieving information from parliamentary debates. I know this is a very interesting and promising field of AI in Parliament. And right now, the Federal Senate is trying to develop a system in which it organizes in different forms, in different panels, parliamentary debates to be publicly available.
So you start with a difficult topic right away. So when it comes to parliamentary operations, we cannot be enough prepared. So it is very tough to be absolutely sure that the technology is absolutely safe proof before entering the Parliament. This is, and I give here a big point to Victor when saying that we need to establish a strong regulatory framework even before introducing any kind of these disruptive technologies. Is this always realistic? Not always, I would say, because it is apparent that many parliaments started introducing a lot of artificial intelligence without even having discussed what to do with them and how they could be regulated internally. This does not mean that the rest of the parliaments can move forward in such an unstructured manner. As a personal recommendation, I would say that parliaments should talk a lot with each other. There are a lot of peer networks that could be involved in this. Above all, the IPU, so that even if possible, a global discussion on artificial intelligence regulation is initiated. So in order to sum this up, I would first opt for the introduction of a strong regulatory framework before initiating such procedures. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fotios, for your considerations. Yassine, would you like to share your thoughts about this question as well?
Of course. Big topic, little time. I think we could talk about this for a very long time. And thank you for my colleagues for your contributions, because I think we've saw different ends of the spectrum from the macro level, from the governance side, and from a more pragmatic side. And I think we fall somewhere in between all of those. We're carving our way through this. So when I think about parliamentary regulations and basically governances, for me, there's two distinct parts that we look at. The first one is the administration side, and the second one is the parliamentarian side. And those are two distinct sides. And then from an objective, from a governance perspective, so in the context of AI, is from an administration side, is we need to be ready. That's our job for when we need to be ready. So when parliamentarians are ready to adopt, okay? And to be ready, it's going to be a journey, and I think each parliament will have their own. For us, it's going to be more grounded in some concrete use cases that we're going to start taking and learning from, and be ready. So the key for readiness perspective is some of the form of governance, of course, to have a cohesive approach to AI, that it's not separate throughout the organization, that there's a body that they can refer to for sort of an AI adoption strategy, so to speak, that they can relate to. That's definitely one thing. The second thing is about defining the use cases that we have in terms of relevancy, in terms of priority for beneficial for the organization as we see it today and how we know it. And the last part is really the more of an investment from a human resources side and financial side, and the appropriate oversight to make that happen. So those things that happens from a governance side, for the administration. And eventually this will trickle down to the parliamentarian side from an adoption perspective. And there we essentially have two bodies. The first one is more kind of what we call the Board of Internal Economy. That's all about more administrative matters. So when AI comes into administrative matters, whether that's productivity, whether that's budget review, audit checks that are AI automated or things of that nature, that body will be in charge of approving that. So I think that structure already exists. And when we talk about legislation perspective, then it's more about the procedural House affairs that will be looking at how the AI can play a role or should play a role in terms of legislation perspective. So those bodies kind of exist. So that's nice to know that that's the end goal from approval for how we're going to use it from an operations perspective. Now it's our job to be ready. The question also talks to the immediate pressures that we have compared to where we want to be effectively. And I think the one use case I can think of right now is the interpretation in Canada. Simultaneous interpretation, to be more concrete. We're a bilingual country. Simultaneous interpretation is essential for all events on Parliament Hill. Without interpreters, we can't function. There is no committees. And currently, there's a global shortage of interpretation. So today, the way I look at it, it's a human resource issue, okay? But I think tomorrow it's going to be, it's a technology issue. And what have you done to be ready for this? And I see this not just for interpretation, but for also a broad skill set that are disappearing in the industry, or that they're short of, will make it that Parliament will not be able to function if it's not available. So that pressure is very real. And when we talk about interpretation, when we talk about things that are fundamental to the bilingualism of Canada as a nation, then what are the rules? What accuracy is important? What are the parameters that's okay for an engagement? Is it for some specific events? Is it for all events? So certainly there's a lot of big questions there that we need to have answers to, and we need to carve a way to that. My biggest question also is, and I'm not sure if my colleagues have seen this as well, is when we adopted the hybrid parliament, certainly it was novel. Certainly it was, we need to put the framework around what that is and how that was going to function. And it was a lot of debate here, politically speaking, about what Parliament should be, and is it in person? Is it hybrid? Is it virtual? And I'm wondering if AI will also be politicized as a discussion from, well, should we use it? Is that really what members should be doing or not doing? And I think that political aspects, I'm very curious about how that will pan out and affect effectively governances, regulations, and how we move forward on this topic beyond what the administration might be able to do from a readiness perspective.
Thank you so much, Yassine, for your considerations. Before I move to the next question, I will break protocol here and ask you a follow-up question, because you approach a topic that was discussed yesterday by the colleague of Peru here in South America about interpretation from Spanish to indigenous languages. I know Canada has a very large indigenous community as well. Are you considering this simultaneous interpretation English, French, or also to these indigenous languages as well? Just out of curiosity, if you can share very briefly.
So two themes. One is, for currently in Parliament, we have a Parliamentary Act that's bilingual, it's officially bilingual. So French and English are a must to conduct basically parliamentary activity where members are concerned. So that's the first, I would say, first number priority. But then we also look at broader than that in other languages, and more in the context of accessibility, actually. So effectively, from an accessibility standpoint, it's part of the Canada Barrier Free Act. And effectively, it speaks that we know we need to be able to remove all barriers, accessibility barriers, whether that's language, whether that's cognitive, whether that's physical impairments to access parliamentary content. And in that context, I think AI will be bound to play a role. We already have members that have indicated that they wish to communicate when they speak in the House and they are minority, they speak a minority language, they would like their constituents to recognize and see that minority language being in Parliament and be visible. And today, obviously, those such requests have already arrived. So we know we need to be ready for that and recognizing that we have a very diverse country and be able to accommodate all different types of minorities and how that will play out. So certainly, I see that as a two-step approach, but we need to, it's on the radar.
Thank you so much, Yassine, for your considerations. I'll move to the next question to you, Fotios. Apparently, Ari has lost his connection. He's trying to regain access. When he rejoins, I will grant him the time to answer the first question as well. So, Fotios, my second question goes to you. As AI becomes a staple in parliamentary operations, there is an undeniable emphasis on privacy of sensitive data and the evolution of internal regulatory structures. Many of these topics that we saw yesterday in the discussions in the conference as well. So my question to you is, how should Parliament adapt their data handling precautions to stand distinct from commercial AI tools like ChatGPT, Google Bard, many others, while concurrently shaping its regulations to ensure the responsible evolution and integration of AI?
Well, thanks for this. Well, which appears to be maybe the biggest obstacle for a wider adoption from our interviews with multiple stakeholders around the globe. So let me try to answer how this can be tackled. So you have been mentioning the commercial AI tools, but we all know that apart from ChatGPT, which is OpenAI's product, there are multiple others, other tools that are based on large language models, which is a form of AI that are open source and completely free. There are also instances of such tools that do not need huge technology and data centers and or IT infrastructure. They run on an isolated laptop. And this is a lot what the future might bring. So the direction in Parliament now, and everybody that is really investing a lot of energy on this, goes in mostly in the direction of the use of on-premise tools. This means that people want these kind of tools to be fully controlled, trained by data sets that are validated, trained by using texts that are language specific. So if I'm in Greece and I'm conducting, let's say, parliamentary operations in Greek, I don't see why my large language models should be trained in Swahili or even English. Mainly, maybe in European languages, in European Union languages, that would be still fine. But outside of this context, I don't see any reason to do so. So we're opting currently, not only my research team, but even larger organizations such as the European Union are rather opting for closed systems, absolutely controlled, trained by safe, validated data, and this is something that we think it's technologically fully implementable with the current state of play. Thank you.
I'll pull up a minute or two before Ari is able to get his video back. But just to pull the thread of thinking about privacy and data, the one thing, well, I guess two comments. Number one, I think there's likely many a parliament that does not have updated, coherent, or concise data governance policies in place. And so I think making lemonade with the lemons that you've been dealt. And I think this is a good opportunity as we are thinking about AI governance to go back and look at basic data governance policies and make sure that those are updated and refreshed given the disruptive technology that we're talking about at this time. It's oftentimes very hard to direct attention towards something like data governance policies without something like an LLM or something exciting to kind of build off of. And so I think there's an ability to leverage those two things together. And then the other point I wanted to make was just in terms of the thinking about use cases as predominantly like on-prem large LLMs that are trained in advance. I do think that there's another approach, right, or another use case that we can also add to the table, which is, we basically looking at cloud approved technologies that are already in use in an institution and figuring out for these relatively small set of cloud-based vendors, what do? We know that the vendor community is already pushing forward at light speed to deploy AI-enabled functionality in their software programs. Those software programs are already to some, largely approved and in use. So how do we think about that new AI functionality that they're deploying in a way that brings that into our operational workflows in a safe way, lets them get in, and provide that value to, a staff worker? And what protections does our institution need if we're letting that functionality in? What are kind of we getting out of that deal? So that those cloud vendors are something that we're thinking about right now.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Victor, would you like to comment on that as well?
Yeah, just two small comments on the lines of Fotios and Jessica. Right now here in Brazilian Parliament, we're still trying to figure out how to adapt general data protection laws to the specificities of parliamentary activities. Just as an example, in a similar way as the US, here in the Senate in Brazil, members of parliament, they check a lot of personal data regarding nominations from our president of the republic to different offices in the country. So lots of information are publicly disclosed, personal identity, numbers, addresses, and resumes, and thousands of information of each individuals that are nominated for different posts. So what should it in terms of general data protection laws here in Brazil? This is let's say a first step before discussing how to use AI to extract, to work this data reasonably and in an effective way to our activities. And second, just to react to Fotios' comment, which I totally agree. When I say about macro level regulation, it does not mean that we are right now are not using AI in our current activities. I have colleagues who already use ChatGPT, Bing, or different LLMs to draft legislation, to draft speeches for members of parliament. So one of the critics that I see here in our current activities is that we should discuss governance and strategic movements towards the usage of AI in parliament. Right now here in Brazil, we're more focused on a regulation perspective, but nonetheless, of course, on a daily basis, we see colleagues using AI. And there was some senators that asked me, should we ban ChatGPT for our staff members? I think this is totally unrealistic, or something like that. So maybe the discussion should be how to provide training. One of senators talked to me, he's a member of the foreign relations committee here in Brazil. And I said to him, you, for example, should forbid your staff members to, I don't know, writing some documents or some speeches about this topic on these commercial platforms, because they can extract information for that. We have sensitive information for the Brazilian government here. So we have to have this kind of education, artificial intelligence education for our staff members that, of course, are already using these commercial platforms. No doubt about it.
Well, not really a comment, more to agree with what has been said by both Ari and Victor. The thing here is, as technologies develop, we should rather have a technology agnostic approach here. And that's also to support my previous comment. So there's no point, let's say, arguing about what kind of approach would be in the delivery of service or what kind of technology stack we would be using, because this is likely to change, which is also related to the legacy systems that the Parliament accommodates. So we should mostly, and that's always my personal opinion, focus on the more institutional features of such use rather than the technology itself, because as I said, this is likely to change as well as its functionality.
Thank you so much, Fotios. Yassine, would you like to share your thoughts on this question as well?
Yes, thank you once more. I'm listening to the discussion here, and a lot of great points once again being brought over. I feel conflicted. I feel conflicted about everything that's being said in some ways, because we talk about an internal approach to basically these AI closed loop kind of systems to ensure security, risk management, and things like that. And in some ways, I'm not sure how. Like Jessica was saying, there's a lot of third-party vendors out there from a public perspective that will advance much faster than an internal development team to develop all these tools. So I think, I'm not sure we're going to build everything in-house. It needs to be some kind of, depending on the use case, what to approach and how to approach, and sometimes maybe even warrant 2 operational models depending on the sensitivity of the information. And in our case, when we talk about, and I think that's key for us, is the classification of information, okay? Does it pose a reputational risk to the house? Even if it's like, okay, it's internal information, but if it comes out, is it really damaging to the reputation, to the security, to people? So certainly that's something that in-house here, we have a clear policy about what that is amongst all our data, so we know what's more at risk versus not at risk, and may help inform a bit the approach. As far as additional risks that are happening, I think I'll come back to the hybrid Parliament aspects, because I think it was a turning point for me in terms of having the Parliament adopt Zoom as a video conferencing platform to conduct business. Effectively, you put Parliament in lines of a third-party vendor for its functioning. If Zoom stops tomorrow, well, obviously we have BCM plans, but it would be an unpleasant experience. So that I think set the tone for, okay, an appetite for change. We realized we could do more faster, and that's been adopted very quickly. Now the expectation is only rising. To come back to the security of data and the accessibility, because I think those are the 2 topics right now that come to mind. I'll give you a concrete case that we have today. It's nice to be able to about use cases that are real and tangible. We have a member of Parliament that just approached us a few weeks ago saying that they had a hearing impairment, and it got to the point where now they need assistance to be able to follow and continue exercising their functions, okay? And now that's a very key scenario, and we're back next week. We're back next week, and we need to enable this member to continue fully exercising their duties. And of course, they participate in public meetings where we do have closed captioning available to help them with that, but we also have secure meetings and caucus meetings where we do not have that closed captioning. And so AI will be bound to play a role there to help this member accomplish their functions. That's the only way we could make this happen. Now, to make this happen beyond the technology that's chosen, and we have multiple, it's a horse race effectively about which one will be best. But certainly there's discussion with the parties about, is this acceptable to you that we do this? These are the parameters, these are the engagement, this is the risk that's being posed. And it's a conversation to be had about this, and ultimately they can decide how to go forward. But I thought it was an interesting part, because I find the 2 biggest cases for AI right now, as far as I'm seeing it, and I could have a different opinion tomorrow, but certainly one stream is about use cases related to accessibility. We talked about interpretation, we talked about closed captioning, we're talking about minority translation for minorities. So the accessibility use cases are very high, which are about expanding access to content. And the other big use cases in another stream is about security and audits and checks and making sure that everything is fine. And they're contradictory in some ways, because then one is about opening up and the other one is about closing down. and yet here we are a bit in the middle of those two things. So I find it very interesting from that perspective.
Thank you so much, Yassine. Just before I yield the floor to Jessica, she raised her hand. Just one very short comment. In addition to using Zoom during these last few years of the pandemic, many parliaments, including Brazil, are using YouTube for God knows how long. So we have basically the data from the biometrics parliamentarians on their voice recognition, and many other data on a private health company for I don't even know how long. So, and this is not just for Brazil, and there are many parliaments in which their data is stored on YouTube. They don't. I remember a few cases where there isn't even a backup. So all the transmissions from the sessions are on the official webpage of the YouTube, and from there they use to add on the website, etc., also social media. But everything is stored on YouTube. So all the parliament's proceedings in memory, it's been held or safeguarded by a private entity. So it's an interesting consideration that you bring about the usage of Zoom during remote deliberations. Jessica, would you like to share your comment as well?
Yes. I wanted to raise the visibility around one other use case around our caseworkers, and it kind of ties into the idea of like, how do you approach cloud-based vendors or other third-party vendors who are already using our data? So in our environment, we have caseworkers, right? They're like frontline office workers who triage constituent requests. You know, a member of the public needs help. They reach out to a member, they ask for some help. Those can sometimes be individual requests for help, but a lot of times it's a campaign, right? Where, you know, Save the Pandas email, you know, has 500,000 people, email every member. It used to be easy to distinguish between individual requests for help and campaigns, which were boilerplate stock email. As we've been going around and assessing AI's impacts on our workflows already, one of the things that we're starting to see is even more sophistication in terms of our campaigns. It's getting our caseworkers to tell who is real and who is not in a campaign, because the emails themselves are becoming so personalized, you can't tell that it's a stock email anymore. And so you cannot tell if it's a real individual or an AI chatbot who is flooding your office with requests to save the pandas, right? And so I tell that story and then kind of switch gears and say, okay, so what are we doing about it, right? And the way that we're trying to approach this, and we're just starting this, is to turn around and look at, we've got 4 or 5 different vendors who provide the software that we use to manage those requests, right? And so we've turned around now and we're starting to deal with that vendor class and say, okay, all of you companies, how are you thinking about using AI in the future? What are your planned deployment schedules for AI related functionality? Are you aware of the problems that we're seeing, and trying to help kind of like liaise between the frontline problems that we're seeing and the technical solutions that are potentially being generated. So I raise that because it's another approach to the buy or build scenario, and kind of gets at a mid-tiered way to handle that.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for your comments. Vitor, I'd like to bring next question to you, and I'd like to bring back one topic that you brought on your opening considerations about the AI committee in the Senate. And we know that AI integration deepens within the parliamentary systems. The role of such committees, such groups, becomes vital for both debate and oversight on how to use AI in the core business of Parliament, which is the legislative process. And these committees, these groups, they usually have the participation of practitioners, members of Congress, in the case of the Senate, the senators, as well as members of the academia. So my question to you is, how might these AI committees or these AI groups or task forces serve as an instrumental platform for fostering informed discussions, shaping internal AI regulations, and ensuring the ethical and effective utilization of these tools and the core parliamentary operations in the legislative process?
Well, I said before, right now here in Brazil, we have two different levels of discussions of implementing using AI in Parliament. The first committee, as you're asking, Luís, I'd say it's basically composed by parliamentarians, by members of Parliament, senators right now, but they are discussing this broad perspective regulation on AI in general in Brazilian society, including Parliament, of course, but other areas as well, private and public areas as well. We have here at the Senate, as well in the House of Representatives in Brazil, a smaller committee, a staff committee, which is the Data Protection Information Technology Committee, composed only by staff members, which is discussing and trying to make a guideline on the use of AI for staff members, of course, for parliament, members of Parliament as well, but especially for staff members who draft legislation, who write speeches, who gather information for suggesting legislation innovations. And so far as I see it, right now we're struggling in this first initial moment in explaining what exactly it is. I was touched by Ari's comments on the 100 interns that could work in Parliament. And some staff members are reporting to us that I think society, members of Parliament, journalists as well, they expect a great level of productivity increase due to artificial intelligence. If they could, for example, just an example, write a good speech in a week, right now, some of them are trying to write with AI assistance tools 3 to 4 speeches. So I think we should discuss at some point the level to which we will accept more or less accurate, more or less unbiased information in our activities in terms of, on the other hand, gaining productivity. This is a very important aspect. We should move towards, or try to maintain, I hope, a level 0 of bias, a level 0 of error or misinformation, or using AI, moving to its broad usage. We should accept more or less accurate information and more or less unbiased information. This is a discussion that right now we're doing here. And how can you use AI and at the same point gain productivity, but at the same time do not lose important democratic values for human rights, for be against bias and so on.
I agree with what my fellow panelists are saying in general, and the thing that the one extra item I'll add is just the concept of piloting, right? And a risk managed approach to rolling out, initiatives like this, right? I don't think that it needs to be all or nothing. One of the things that we had been tossing around was the idea of, if you did look at members, right, you might not start with creating an LLM of a member using all of their records and somebody who's currently working in office as a member of our House of Representatives, but you might look at a historical figure, right? It might feel a bit safer if you take somebody who is deceased, who was active 100 years ago, you create an LLM using their records, and you have historians test it, and then you've put some guardrails on the activity on the pilot that you're setting up, and you can kind of evaluate it before rolling it out in a different manner.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for your considerations. Yassine, would you like to share your thoughts with us?
Sure, absolutely. It kind of dawned on me, like actually no longer, like yesterday only, I actually went to a workshop about AI and use cases. I kind of speak a bit to this, and there's a few things I'd like to share with you that caught my attention. And when we speak about, having informed discussions on how AI could be of use, clearly it's the review of a tremendous amount of data and information across, suggesting relevant literature, and getting the contribution from association stakeholders and lobbyists and synthesizing that is going to be a huge. The other one that I thought was very interesting is really about that AI were able to figure out maybe recommendations in legislation or identify gaps in legislations or problems or conflict with other laws. And another thing that's from a informed discussion perspective is really about AI capabilities of forecasting the long-term impact of legislation, which I find very interesting from a financial or economical perspective. These are things that are, from a human perspective, very challenging to do. But certainly, if we understand, like in 10 years from now, the impact of this law is this, it can help more informed decisions for Parliament. And to Jessica's point earlier is, well, that's good, that's going to collect all that, but it also needs to avoid all the noise and the counter agents and the social bots and all those things that might be influencers for that, and security checks and the bias, informed bias, and all those things. So ultimately, it's going to be a balance, like all of you have mentioned before. And to achieve that in an ethical way, I think really it comes down to three things for me. It's the governance and oversight of anything that's related. And what are the bodies that will make sure that things are happening the right way as per the principles agreed upon. The transparency and accountability is going to be key, and I think that's been mentioned many times. And not just transparency, not that the information is there, that's also easy to find, easy to understand, clear consequences for misuse against the existing policies, and obviously civic education. Okay, it's very clear that there's a large part of education for all involved to be successful in this. And that alone is a tremendous challenge, I would say, to think about having participated myself in, for example, members orientation programs, and to bring up people from all over the country with very different backgrounds, from the very different spheres of life, to bring them back to the same level of understanding of AI, so they can use it appropriately according to per code of conduct and things like that. It's not negligible.
Thank you so much, Yassine, for your considerations. Fotios, would you like to share your thoughts about this question and what the colleagues just shared? You are on mute, Fotios.
Sorry about this. When we started reflecting on these issues years ago, we saw, and we had multiple debates internally in the Parliament, we saw that we need to proceed with as much evidence as possible. And we also saw that the applications and the services that will be needed based on AI will be different from Parliament to Parliament. So we did a series of things. First of all, we developed a tool, which is more or less an interactive workshop that we, using a reflection group in any given Parliament, we would collect a lot of information and practically prioritize the use of such technologies in the parliamentary workspace. So in practical means, this would mean that we let the Parliament decide what sort of services of AI-based services it would like to have. And secondly, we did a separate survey, this one in the European Union context, and we asked European Union officials about their preferences in the lawmaking process. Now, something very, very specific. So on the one side, this is a bit, the context is a bit wider. How can you use AI in parliaments? So you have several sectors there, apparently. On the second case, it was much more focused on AI in the legislative sector. And let me tell you here something very interesting from the second, from our second approach. So it turns out that most of the people, if not all, this is work in progress currently, and I'm very fortunate to lead this investigation for the European Union. It appears that people are not interested in giving human tasks away. So they don't ask So we're talking here about medium to high level professionals. They don't want to give their job to machines. They are likely interested into giving away tasks that are very boring or unproductive or may sometimes repetitive. So this would mean that in principle, when automating these processes and different tasks using artificial intelligence, but not only AI, this would mean that automatically you can make these people more efficient, more productive, better able to utilize human cognitive features in a better way. So this is something that says a lot about what AI might bring in the wider parliamentary context. Sure, it might have issues and it might lead to problems if not properly introduced or regulated. But I see here tremendous opportunities in substantially changing the efficiency and maybe the status of the parliamentary institution in the medium to long term.
That I'm biased to answer these comments over to react to these comments. I work at the office for drafting here in Brazil as a counselor, so I totally agree with what you said. And in this sense, making this small disclosure, I think that one of the main, or maybe one of the main uses in the future for AI in the legislative activities will be for the gathering and making sense of big data, huge amounts of data. And when we think about that, when we talk with members about this, the need to develop new systems, new usage to make governance innovations, in-house innovations, they are more or less skeptical. They say, "Oh, we've been doing this for decades." Some of them are more than 80 years old. I've been doing this since I was a young boy, and political activity in this decade hasn't changed so much. And making here also a disclosure on the step strategies to try to push forward these agendas, these technological agendas in our Congress. I don't know how it is in the United States, but here, since we are a presidential system, parliamentarians are always behind the executive in terms of information. We are always behind. So when we try to talk to parliamentarians in terms of innovation, of data innovation in our activities, we usually say, with this, we can get a little bit closer to the executive. We can have more quality information. We can be better positioned to draft better legislation, to do our oversight activities. And this is, in general, it has a positive reception. So when we are trying to convince them and show the potential of new technologies, we usually say, we should try to move a little closer to the executive and do our jobs better. This has been proven, at least in our experience, to be a positive approach, a promising approach to develop these new technological approaches and projects and strategies.
Thank you so much, Victor, for your considerations. Fotios, would you like to comment on that as well?
Well, I don't think, exactly as Victor said, I don't think there's much more to say without really deviating from what from our core discussion here. So I would like, once again, and without taking a lot of your time, to suggest that we should be forward-looking. So in that sense, me representing a parliamentary research service, we have been asked and we are providing guidance. So we not more, not less. So and with our current state of knowledge, our best possible scenario for use of AI in parliaments would go first in the direction for parliaments that have not used AI so far institutionally. People might use it, of course, might use ChatGPT just like that, and it's fine to experiment. But for an institutional use, we would suggest a very structured process that uses a regulatory scheme from within, from the parliament, and then some sort of an investigation, a study to prioritize features and services and tools, and then move on to the technologies and how implementation would look like. So it's a long process, but it better be regulated rather than unstructured. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fotios. Yassine, would you like to comment what the colleague just said?
Sure. I think most of it has been said already. I think the colleagues have done a great job at showcasing the different facets of this. One thing that came to mind, and I was kind of smiling to myself a bit earlier, because we talked a lot about the productivity gain from AI, and I'm assuming that all my colleagues will agree that that turns into time with family and friends, right? Not more work. Okay, no. So it's interesting to me that more productivity, but the whole work-life balance that we had projected maybe 4 decades ago that would come from technology has not quite yet materialized, and it seems like we're going to have to wait a little while longer for that. Joking aside with regards to that part, I mean, I think overall that the interactions and communication with constituents will improve. I think there's going to be more tools. We talked earlier about the idea of broader accessibility for minorities within the country through real-time translation of speeches and things of that nature. I think those are positive things. I'm more of an optimistic nature with regards to that. As far as decision making, I think one thing that came to mind to me was in Canada we have adopted an e-voting system, which is the highest level of decision making a parliamentarian can make. And maybe what I thought I would share with you is more that even the decision making around making that a reality. This is the 4th time Canada has tried to put an e-voting system, and every time it got to a halt. So it took a fourth try was the good charm in this case. Okay, and the discussions I think that we gained from that taught us a bit the way that is likely to happen with regards to additional AI adoption. So it is, first of all, a tool that enables members to authenticate themselves, etc., identity management, face recognition to make sure that they're the ones voting, okay? But the discussions around integrity of the application, the transparency of the application, who should have visibility into the back end in terms of seeing that things are happening as they should, all the safeguards that were put in place with regards to that. So members can vote as many times and within the allotted slot as they want to. They can say yes, then no, then yes again, then no. But all those things and all those decisions that members are making are all publicly broadcasted for Canadians to see as to they voted yes, but at the end they voted no, for instance, okay? So that was all part of the discussions from a transparency and accountability, which I think was very important. And we could have showed a tally at the end saying, well, do we have a 200 yes and 100 no? But no, we still show every single individual members what they voted on screen with their picture. So it's keeps that tradition alive, but also keeps the accountability of each member alive. And that extends afterwards to the parliamentary website, where to continue maintaining that trust with constituents, that they have access to the content live on demand since 2006 for all the video and audio content. They have access to all the transcription for all the recordings since 1997. So there's a huge, and not just from a proceedings perspective, but also from financial accountability, how they spend their money, how they promote, that is available. So I think all those things contribute to gaining and maintaining that trust. And obviously we know it's fragile, but I think that's it's something that's being established over time that will help adopt these new ways of working and being transparent and accountable with them again.
Thank you so much, Yassine, for your considerations. Jessica, would you like to share your comments and close this round?
Yes, I'd love to. I agree with everything that Yassine just said, and I must just to step up one level, say, at this kind of collective moment in time where the use cases and the implementation of AI tools are not so great and they're still manageable, I think we're in this narrow window of opportunity where we can establish robust governance documentation, and that includes accountability and transparency baked in from the get-go, and doing it now it is just incredibly critical so that we set ourselves up in the future for success and that level of like public trust and transparency in how we're using this technology.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Just one disclaimer: we have 9 minutes to end this panel. So, and I have one last question. So I'll ask each one of you to be very brief on your considerations. Yassine, I'd like to invite you to answer this question first. With the ever-evolving landscape of AI, there will be invariably be unknowns and unforeseen consequences of its implementation within the parliamentary structures. My question to you is, how can parliaments create adaptable and resilient AI governance systems that can quickly identify and address emerging challenges, all while maintaining the trust and confidence of the public and ensuring that the essence of the democratic debate remains uncompromised?
Very big question for 2 minutes, and a very difficult one too. Like, I mean, it's so maybe we talked to about a lot of these aspects already, but I think the main one that stuck out was really about governance's positioning and being there and the structure required there. I would say that I work in a field that's very live in the moment. Okay, like I mentioned, like in terms of audiovisual. So we can never have a microphone that's not working or a camera that's not working on live TV. It doesn't look good for the prime minister or the leader of the official opposition. And so this live response and adaptability is critical in our work to be able to respond and avoid those things happening in the first place. One thing that can retain from that, and this that's applicable here, is the nimbleness of the governance. And really what it comes down to in a short term is the quick access to executive and decision makers. And we are fortunate at the House that we have an executive leadership that believes in innovation and that's supportive of it. But the quick access to that when things go well and things won't go not well is key and paramount to be able to react quickly and be accountable for things that go right and things that go wrong. And once again, in the spirit of transparency with regards to that. So for me, the quick access to that is the most important part in terms of being more adaptable. Yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Thank you so much, Yassine, for your comments. Fotios, would you like to comment as well?
Sure. Quick is here rather relevant because parliaments are also, public organizations, and they have most of them. They have very rigid and long and unpleasant procedures for contracting or subcontracting these kind of systems. So the idea would be here. Well, the how, I tried to highlight it previously. It starts by having something like a digital strategy. Most parliaments should have something like this, dedicated or within a wider strategy. Of course, you can, when you have digital strategy, you can think about having something like an AI strategy, or this could be integrated within the wider digital strategy as well. So it needs to start from somewhere. Then you should probably start to prioritize. There are so many technologies, which we said this already. There's so many potential applications. The dear colleagues have mentioned numerous. Not least Yassine in his own sector. So so there is so much to do even before introducing any kind of system. I would simply suggest, and I will end exactly as I started. One should keep an eye on what's out there. Talk to peers from other parliaments. There's a lot of information already being shared. The thing that we do this here, and we have a lot of people watching, it's one of these things. So anybody can get back to me, to Yassine, Jessica, and Victor, and Ari, of course, to learn more about what can be done. And there's no there's no size fits all for parliaments. Every parliament is different. The parliaments have also different levels. There might be subnational parliaments, national, federal. multinational, just like the European Parliament. So it depends what you want, but there needs to be a plan. And as long as it is one, everything gets much easier. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fotios, for your considerations. Jessica, would you like to share your thoughts as well?
Sure. Yeah, very quickly, I would just say we really need to get to agile contracting and procurement. You know, this old school manners of approve once and set and forget really don't work when it comes to disruptive technology and AI in particular. So we need a changed mindset, right? Where we're routinely going back and making sure that these technologies are living and adapting to our needs.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for your considerations. Vitor, any thoughts on this question as well?
Just a small comment. Yeah, agreeing totally with what was said by Yassine, Fotios, and Jessica about agility, procurement, access to executives, and of course, making a flexible strategy for the future. Maybe another key element in this scenario would be social participation. I've been working here at the Senate for 11 years, and so far I see that parliamentarians, they have, of course, a strict relationship with their constituents, but we staff, I think public policies for parliament sometimes do not. At least this is the scenario in Brazil. Maybe one element would be, I don't know, this is common in the executive, public council, advisory council with civil society, NGOs that work on this field, in technological field. What society expects from parliament in terms of technological tools and advancements? I think maybe this could be one key element in this equation.
Fantastic conversation. It was very nice being here and participating and hear you all. I think I'm reflecting right now, and I think we'll be reflecting for the next few days. The only thing I can think of is all this time that's required to be invested in here, and how long it's going to take to get that maturity, etc. And so my fear is that it takes so long to get us there that effectively it becomes a deprecated parliament, right? So the kind of the opposite, because the consumer market will move so much faster that expectation will change drastically. And if parliament does not adapt as fast, then it will look like an obsolete or traditional or regressive parliament. So that's one thought that just came to mind as we reflected on all this. You're muted, Luis, I believe.
Sorry, 3 years of pandemic and I still didn't learn that. Vitor, you have any final thoughts on today's debate? Okay.
So it was very interesting, productive for me to be here in this panel today, and taking from Yassine's consideration, I think from macro level, from a broader perspective, what seems at stake here, it's democracy itself, as I see it. We should think about technology not just as doing better or more productively what we always done, but how doing things differently, how to do it in more transparent, democratic, effective ways of making legislation, scrutinizing executives, and all things that parliaments do, but how to make them different. I think this is one of the last message I would like to give to you. Thank you, Luis. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Vitor. Jessica, do you have a final message for today's debate?
It's a fantastic debate. I was kind of chuckling to myself because a colleague and I recently found a hard copy printout of the policies for using the internet from the mid-1990s, and it was a typewritten document. And we looked at this and we realized how it had shaped a whole generation of thought in the House of Representatives. And I think we're all kind of collectively at that next moment. It's the next generation's moment. So it's a very exciting time. And, thank you for pulling this panel together and moderating this conversation, Luis.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for your participation. Fotios, you have any closing thoughts for today's panel?
Beyond thanking you all and you personally, Luis, for this opportunity, this is something. It's exciting because it's developing. It's something that we are very fortunate, maybe to have caught this this technology right in its beginnings, or better said, in the beginning of its democratization, because AI has been around since maybe the 60s. So right now, the world is seeing this, what it can do, and it's likely that the future would bring a lot more useful applications, but also likely to bring a lot of considerations. And since we work in or for parliaments or around, I think we have a deeper obligation to advise and assist the politicians and our institutions to make good use of this technology, because obviously there are also downsides. We need to ensure as much as possible that these kind of tools are introduced, designed, and procured, and everything as efficient as possible, make good use of public money, and being implemented as efficient as possible for the best of the citizens and our countries.